very special guest in St. Andrews, a person by the name Madison Moore. Madison is a researcher at the University of King's in the English department. Madison is equally, he specializes in fashion, pop culture. He's also an intellectual, and he has an upcoming book called The Theory of Fashion Class that's going to be published in the coming months to come by Yale University Press. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Madison Moore, giving the talk, You Better Work, Queerness, and the Catwalk.
How's it going? I really mean, how's it going?
Good.
Feedback. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about fabulousness and queerness and the catwalk. And we're going to have a bit of fun today, so I hope you're ready and revved up. So just to introduce myself a bit further, I know a lot of you may wonder how maybe I got to this place in terms of studying fashion and nightlife and things that I work on. And maybe some of you also might want to do graduate degrees or move on into academia. And really it's that when I was doing my Ph.D. in American Studies at Yale, my dissertation advisor asked me, well, what do you like to do? What do you want to study? And I was like, I don't know. Not probably the best response. But so then he said, what do you like to do in your spare time? And I told him, well, I like to read fashion magazines, go shopping, and go clubbing. And he said, those aren't real, He said that I should study that stuff. And I said, what do you mean that's not real research? You can't study clubs, you can't study fashion magazines, that's not really real. And so actually the process of me being in grad school was learning, in fact, how to ask those questions, learning how to study things like nightclubs or things like fashion or things like the catwalk, which is what we're going to hear about today. And this was all through a field called performance studies, which is about another way of thinking about theater. So theater, you may know, we're in a sort of theater style room right now, right? So theater as like being plays. But performance studies is really about thinking about all kinds of performances. So whether that's pop music, whether that's sports, whether that's going on a first date, like thinking about all of these things as performances. And so that's how I kind of arrived in this space of doing what I'm here to do with you today. At the same time, when I was in grad school, I was also working in New York in fashion magazines, and I was kind of very much in the world. And I felt unfulfilled working only as a fashion person, because I wasn't using my brain, in a kind of nerdy way. And yet if I did the only nerd stuff, I wasn't actually fulfilled because I wasn't around the beautiful shoes and I wasn't in the fashion closet. So I decided that the best way to do this is to kind of combine them both. So that's just a little bit of context so you can see how I got to this space. What we're going to talk about today is how fashion, how fabulousness, how style is about a kind of, for me anyway, about a kind of queer affirmation and affirmation of queerness. And that it's also an aesthetic practice. So it's something that you don't just put on. I didn't just put this on because it's hot. I put it on because it says something. It makes me feel good, but it also says something about what I want to say about me and my sort of performance of myself. And so today's talk is about fabulousness and queer performance. Now, I like to be active, so I want you guys to get out of your seats. And I want you to find some space around the room, just somewhere over here. This cute little catwalk over here.
Take the podium.
And Catwalk connects to queerness and to Black queerness and other queernesses of color, and how this is about self-love and performance. I'm interested in this thing of prancing on the catwalk as being about the real-time performance of queerness and fabulousness. So walking around the room as you did and feeling your oats, feeling the fantasy. I'm interested in how the catwalk is a space where that is actually enabled. So let me show you what I mean. Work! Ooh, sitting up on some eyelashes. That's a lot of talent with little resources. This kid is fabulous. They're talking about a young Thai boy named Madison fashionista who became a viral internet sensation because he posted these photographs of himself in really creative looks made from things that were just laying around the house. He makes something out of nothing, innovative outfits out of nothing. And the videos are interesting because each outfit is around like a little vignette and he sort of pops out in a new look for you to see. So here's what that looks like. Just to show you a couple things that I think that fabulousness does and why I chose this example to show you some of the things that are happening. On the one hand, I think fabulousness is a mode of creative expression, which is what this video is all about. Each vignette is a chance for him to interact with his surroundings, to take a basket and turn it into a headpiece, to take fire and it suddenly becomes a fabulous accessory, and then he poses to eternity at the end of the flip, right? I find fabulousness interesting because it's an aesthetic that is typically used by people who have been marginalized in some way. So they're not in the majority, they're not white, male, or straight. This is about responding to restrictive cultural conditions. So fabulousness is about saying, I'm here, get into it. It's not asking for permission to exist. It's not asking for permission to wear a basket on my head or to do anything in particular. It's doing it on its own merit. Now, I'm not saying that fabulousness is about particular materials. It's not necessarily about sequins or diamonds. I'm not saying that it is something, but that it does something. And there's, I think, a difference between something that is and something that does. Fabulousness, because I don't want to say that, oh, you need to check these boxes and that's fabulous. That's actually not the point. The point is that it does something, and what I'm interested in, and what we're going to talk about today, is what it is that fabulousness does. It's largely about marginalized people, so black people, queer people, trans people, brown people, who are all dressed up with some place to be. This is not to say that only marginalized people can do fabulousness, of course not, but that there is something about being marginalized that makes you prone, perhaps, to do fabulousness. It's a demand for visibility by the marginalized. Now, one thing that I think is really interesting about the theme of fabulousness is that it can't be exchanged. I can't give you a box of fabulousness. I mean, yeah, I could give you a box with like nice little pieces in it, but I can't actually make you fabulous by giving you this box, right? And so in that way, it can't really be exchanged in a way that like money is exchanged. I can give you $10 and give me, or pounds, give me 10 pounds, you give me 10 pounds, and then it's like an exchange, and you can, this, that. But I don't think fabulousness works in the same way. I think you can be inspired by it. You can draw inspiration from it. You can think, oh, okay, well, maybe if I wore my hair to the other side, maybe that would be cute. Or if I put my hair in trouble, that would be cute too, And so it's about this kind of to and fro, not about like something that can be put on you, like a checklist, right? And I spoke to the designer Patricia Field, who, if you've seen Sex and the City at all, she did the costume design. She created Perry Bartshaw, basically, all of those women. And I asked her about, fabulousness and what it meant for her. And she said to me that it's not about money, that it's not about, she said that she works with these women who go to Christian Dior and spend $500,000, let's say, but that's not fabulous. You just have a lot of clothes in the closet, right? Fabulous is something that is unique and has not been seen before, something that meets the eye, something that tells a story, right? And so what I'm interested in is people who approach fabulousness as this kind of storytelling, as this thing of like, okay, here's my need, let me show you what it is, as a way to kind of invite you in deeper. So here's an editorial image of Mandy who we've seen earlier. I mean, come on now. Pots and pans as a dress, right? This is about taking everyday materials that we use all the time that have a certain utilitarian or useful value and making them into objects arranging them into an aesthetic object. And in this way, I think that what Mandy illustrates is 4 things about fabulousness. One, that it's a kind of rebellion, that it's a rebellion against whatever boxes you're supposed to be in, give it your born sex, or whatever kind of rebellion it is that you're kind of going against. I've done a number of interviews with this, and I always ask people, when was the first time you felt fabulous? And it's not really about, well, when was the first time you put on your first heel, or when did you first go to the grocery store with a boa on? But it's really about, when did you kind of come into yourself? And what I learned is that there's always a turning point. So people always, they tell me when they realize that they kind of stepped into fabulousness or kind of started being themselves, that they stopped, that they stopped caring about what people thought of them. That they didn't give into the peer pressure anymore to fit in. They didn't actually care about fitting in. And it was when they stopped worrying about what other people thought of them, then they kind of were able to soar. And this is the rebellion that I'm talking about. Then there's queer labor, which to me is another way of thinking about the labor that, there's 2 kinds of labor, let's say. The work that you have to do because you have to pay your bills, because you have to get a good grade in your seminar or whatever. And then there's a labor you do because you actually love doing it, whether that's making music or making clothes or cooking or whatever it is that you put your sort of aesthetic soul in. This is this kind of labor that's reclaimed. You do it because you want to do it, because it feeds you in some kind of way. The third thing is self-couture. So you all know, you can get the play on words, haute couture and self-couture. So instead of this thing of making garments for other people, you actually are yourself the work of art. You sort of embroider yourself. You spend all that time making yourself into the kind of art object. And then the last piece is critical mascara. And I think this is 2 things. On the one hand, fabulousness is critical because it kind of makes us think about the way that gender is performed, the ways that identities are performed, the way that we are supposed to be in our bodies, and it critiques that. This Thai boy is not supposed to be dressing this way and posing as feminine as he is. He's not supposed to be making pots into an outfit, and yet he's doing it anyway. That's the critical part. Mascara is just fabulous, the tool of fabulousness, one of many brushstrokes, which means that with critical mascara, it's possible to be critical and look great too. So I want to play 2 songs. The first is RuPaul 1993, Supermodel You Better Work. One of my first exposures to RuPaul that I remember. And I'm interested in this thing of work, right? So I told you before that queer labor is a piece of fabulousness, and I want you to think about work as it's queer labor.
Once upon a time, there was a little black girl in the Brewster Projects of Detroit, Michigan. At 15, she was spotted by an Ebony Fashion Fair talent scout, and her modeling career took off.
You better work.
Anyone have a guess what the next song is going to be that's about work? Yeah, that one. That's the one. That's the one.
You wanna hot body? You wanna booty body? You wanna massage? You wanna butt bitch? You wanna money? Sit in Martins, look hot in a bikini. You wanna butt bitch? You wanna live fancy, live in a big mansion, party with friends. You wanna butt bitch? You wanna butt bitch? You wanna butt bitch? You wanna butt bitch? Look at your butt bitch.
Can I ask you to think about what could be the differences between these two tracks that I've just played? Maybe in terms of content.
It seemed like the first one, work was kind of used as like an avenue into being more of yourself, whereas in the Britney song, it was work in order to have a certain kind of lifestyle, very, very expensive, very capitalistic, very flashy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a distinction between
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep.
I might be wrong here, but I think there's a bit of an appropriative nature to Britney's version.
Appropriate? You said appropriate?
Appropriative. Like, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
appropriating something that's not hers,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. I don't know enough about working, I guess, to say whether it
You will have to tonight.
like the LGBT, but I don't know if it's something that's accessible to her specifically, if
Yes.
someone who's not part of it.
Sure. So the appropriation piece.
And I think the next line of RuPaul's song is so important, where it's like, it doesn't matter what you wear. And that's not all what Britney's saying. She's saying you have to fit in this role, this materialistic world.
Is there someone over here?
I guess Britney's work is like really just toiling to get this whatever you want, whereas RuPaul, his work is like work that's the end in itself. It's not, whereas Britney is like you're working for something, RuPaul is like you're working.
Yes. So on one hand, you have the kind of commercialism, basically commercialism versus the body. What did she say? Like, you want a Maserati, you want to live luxury, you want to live fancy. It's all about me, and it's kind of consumerism, this commercialism piece. This has a broad history. Are you familiar with the term conspicuous consumption? So conspicuous consumption is something that was kind of, well, the term itself actually was originated by this sociologist named Thorstein Veblen, who wrote a book called The Theory of the Leisure Class in 1899, where he basically laid out what was going on in a kind of Gilded Age in the United States. So let's say the period of the late 1970s to 1870s to to the end of the 19th century. And so conspicuous consumption really is about, for Beverly anyway, it's about proving you can pay for things. So having a big house, having that Maserati or whatever, as Brittany's talking about, having these big elaborate feasts as they had in places like this, the Waldorf Astoria in New York in 1897, this was about power. It was about showing, you know what, I have all this money, I can waste it, it doesn't matter if we eat all this food. Look, my dress is so big, I have all this extra fabric behind me, I don't even need all this fabric, right? It's about this surplus, this too muchness, right? And this is actually about power, and that you can pay for things. Whereas I think fabulousness is about creativity. So they're both conspicuous, they're both spectacular, and they both draw you in, and they both have this sense of surplus, but one is about power, and one is about imagination. Now I'm going to take us to the catwalk. I remember being a young boy, and I was obsessed with, we had this television show called this fashion TV network called Fashion TV, and it was just, all it was just like runway shows, 24 hours a day, all the time, just runway shows. And I would just, before I knew that I would be in St. Andrews, I mean, I was like, whatever, I don't know, 12, so like really long time ago. But I would just sit and watch these fashion shows, and I would just watch the models. And I wasn't that interested in the clothes, I was interested in the models, and I was interested in the music and the performance and like the attitude, and I was interested in kind of what they were giving on stage. Can I have a couple of volunteers? Okay, we can all just do it then. Just all be volunteers. Yeah. You don't have to move just yet. But, so I told you that I've always been drawn to fashion shows and the kind of model walk. Not necessarily the models themselves, not necessarily even the clothes themselves, but just the thing of the catwalk and like people coming in and out and doing this kind of performance on it. Yes. Even when I go dancing, I've always been drawn to fashion catwalks as a space where you're meant to see and be looked at. A moving display case of identity where the job is to tell a story and sell garments by walking straight ahead. This is something that most of us do all the time. Even when I go dancing, one of my signature moves is walking around the room to the mood of the music like I'm on a catwalk. Not at all on a common side if you're at the club and there are some brown queens in the room. We'll be at the club and one of my friends will manage to find a long enough corridor, just like this maybe, or a corner somewhere, and we'll each take turns walking to the music, working the room, going back and forth, looking at each other, commenting on each other's moves.
kind of want to.
Can you, can you tell me what is so appealing, perhaps, about walking as a dance? So not even really even doing anything, just walking around to the beat of the music.
It's an empowerment.
Empowerment.
Like you were talking about, like obviously a lot of, you know, especially if you're queer, like person of color, anything that isn't a cis, straight, white male, you know, you have to empower yourself because the world's not going to do it for you.